الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
I don't wanna write this down. I wanna tell you how I feel right now. I don't wanna take no time to write this down. I wanna tell you how I feel right now. Hey, tomorrow may never come. For you or me, life is not a promise. Tomorrow may never show up. For you and me, this life is not a promise. Perfect man, I'm trying to do the best that I can with what it is I have. I ain't no perfect man, I'm trying to do the best that I can with what it is I have. Put my heart and soul to the song. I hope you feel me from where I am to wherever you are. I mean that sincerely. Tomorrow may never come. For you and me, life is not a promise. Tomorrow may never appear. You better hold this very moment, very close to you right now. Very close to you right now. So close to you right now. So close to you. Don't be afraid to let it shine. My homie said, shine your light on the world. Shine your light for the world to see. My hobby said, shine your light on the world. Shine your light for the world to see. My hobby said, shine your light on the world. Shine your light for the world to see. My homie said, shine your light on the world. Shine your light for the world. Sometimes I get discouraged. I look around and things are so weak. People are so weak. Sometimes I feel like crying. Sometimes my heart gets heavy. Sometimes I just wanna leave and fly away. Sometimes I don't know what to do with myself. Passion takes over me. Feel like a man going insane. Lose my brain trying to maintain one thing. Hey, hey, hey. Put my heart and soul into this, y'all. I hope you feel me where I am to wherever you are. Sometimes I don't want to be bothered. Sometimes I just want a quiet life. Me and my baby, me and my lady. Sometimes I don't want to get into snowball. Sometimes I don't want to be a soldier. Sometimes I just want to be a man. But homie said, shine your light on the world. Shine your light for the world to see. My hobby said, shine your light on the world. Shine your light for the world to see. My dreamer said, shine your light on the world. Shine your light for the world to see. My elder said, shine your light on the world. One voice, one mic, like unite. Come on and do it right, like to unite. Come on and do it right, like to unite. Come on and get down, gotta have love, peace and understanding. One God, one voice, one life, one man, one shine my light, like to unite. Hop up and do it right, like to unite. Come on and do it right, like to unite. That's what I like, yeah, baby. My people, black people, my people, black people, my people, my people.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Living Islam Today here on 96.1 FM and also 900 AM WURD Radio. I'm your host for today, Brother Jihad Ahmed, and we got a great show in store for you today. Before we do anything, we like to open up with prayer as we always do. We pray and we ask Almighty God, Allah, to bless us. We pray that the words that come out of our mouths today can be a healing message to you, the listeners, as well as the viewers. We believe that this religion of Islam was sent to Prophet Muhammad. Peace and blessings be upon him. We believe that Prophet Muhammad is the last and final messenger to come for all mankind. We believe that this religion was sent to all mankind, black people, white people, brown people, red people, all humanity, this beautiful religion of ours. We have a wonderful, great show in store for you today. I'm very, very, very excited about today's show because I have a young lady that's going to be joining me after the break, and she is definitely like family to me. So I'm very excited that she's going to be joining us. This is Saturday, May the 29th, 2021. It's also the 17th day of Shawwal, 1422. So, as we said to you last week, the importance of fasting the months of Shawwal. It's very important that you do this. The 6 days of Shawwal are very important for you to fast. So how about you do this? You take of next week, Monday and Tuesday, fast those days. Fast Wednesday and Thursday. Don't fast on Friday, but mix it up because we still have time to get these prayers in. It's so very, very, very important. I want to thank everyone who makes a donation to help us stay here on the airways of 900 AM WURD Radio and 96.1. Funny story I'll share with you. Woke up this morning and there was an envelope sitting on the living room desk table. It was a donation. Someone sent in a donation. They didn't have Cash App. They didn't have any of those things. They just sent a donation. I'm not going to mention the individual's name, but I will say this. This show is a 25-year tradition here in the city of Philadelphia. And because of you and your generous support since August the 5th, the show came under new management. It was no longer under United Muslim Masjid. It became under the management of myself, Ahmed Media. And we took on this project and we've been funding ever since. We've been fundraising. We've been getting people to give us donations. People have been cutting ads and commercials in support to help us stay here on the air. We believe that this is a very important tool, a very important vehicle here in the city of Philadelphia. I'm going to say that we are the only Sunni African-American radio program that is on the airwaves. Not only are we on the airwaves, but we can be heard throughout the country by going to the app. There are only three black-owned radio stations in the country. Only three. This program right here, WURD Radio, here in Philadelphia, and I think one is in Chicago, and I forget where the other two are at. But we're here, and we're thankful to you, the viewers, the listeners, our supporters that have been with us through years. But I'm very grateful for those that have, come along with us now as of August, because this is an independent media program that we're doing. We don't have any financial support from any masjid. No Islamic organization funds this show. Personal donations are made. One is from an organization that is not even an Islamic organization, Caring for Friends. And we have Muslim Serves. And we got other people that will be joining us because they believe in the programs that myself, Brother Qasim Rashad, that we're doing here each and every Saturday from 5 p.m. until 6 p.m. And we're excited to be here. As I said to you, we have a really great show. We want to thank Malcolm White, who is listening and watching us on Facebook and Westmount area. We want to thank Chris Fitzgerald, who's joining us also. And those that are listening via the airways, we thank you so very much. We have an excellent show, and you're really going to enjoy this show. So what I want to do, we want to go to a commercial break, and we come back. We're going to be talking about autism in the Black community. You're listening and watching Living Islam Today. We'll be right back.
There's a new option in Philadelphia for the moment a person decides to stop using drugs or alcohol. It's called Access Point, operated by Northeast Treatment Centers, the most trusted nonprofit provider of addiction treatment services in Philadelphia. At Access Point, you can walk in right now or anytime, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. We know that waiting to receive medication is a big reason people don't follow through with treatment. At Access Point, once you make the decision to stop using, we can stabilize you and administer medication immediately. You are able to stay with us for up to 23 hours so we can monitor and treat withdrawal symptoms. We can then work with you to develop a plan of care and help move you into the most appropriate next level of care to meet your needs. If this is your day to make that decision and you want immediate attention, contact Access Point at 844-533-8200. That's 844-533-8200. We are located at 5th and Spring Garden. We are here when you need us. Access Point.
Khadijah Alderman's Funeral Service Incorporated. Don't let your family bear the burden of your final arrangements. Pre-arrange now.
We specialize in janaza services, traditional Christian services, natural burials, and theme services.
We provide repasts, domestic and international shipping, webcasting, and Skyping.
We service all denominations.
Our new location, 1924 West Hunting Park Avenue, Philadelphia 19140, 215-225-6600. Visit us at www.khadijahsfuneralservice.com. That's www.khadijahsfuneralsvc.com.
Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
Khadijah Alderman's Funeral Service, serving humanity with dignity.
Nearly 26% of Philadelphia's population live below the poverty line in 2017. There's an increasing share of residents struggling to cover the most fundamental necessities. On a national level, Philadelphia was among the highest with poverty rates. Muslim Serve's mission is to develop and implement programs addressing food insecurity in collaboration with local community partners. Fundamentally, Muslim Serve strives to uplift those in our community by providing free, hot, nutritious meals. This is done by partnering with a variety of local community organizations and establishments with the goal to bring comfort to those in need and to relieve hunger in our area, no matter who they are. Veterans, students, people with disabilities, single parents, senior citizens, working class families, and children. Muslim Serve can be reached by phone at 833-486-4370 or by email at info@muslimserve.org. Learn more about Muslim Serve and what they do on their website, muslimserve.org, and on their social media pages, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Muslim Serve. You're listening to Living Islam Today, an Ahmed Media Company project on WURD Radio, 900 AM and 96.1 FM. There's a new option in Philadelphia for the moment.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Living Islam Today. I'm your host, Brother Jihad Ahmed, and as I said to you, we got a really, really good show in store for you. What I need you to do right now is to reach out and let everyone know that Living Islam Today is on the air. And we got some special guests that's going to be joining us, and I'm so very happy. And as we work through our little glitches today, I'm going to say Salaam Alaikum to everyone that is listening and watching, and a special Salaam Alaikum greetings of paradise and peace to my lovely, almost relative who is joining us today here on the air. Salaam Alaikum, cousin Wasn't.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Monica Wallace is joining us, everyone. For those who do not know, she also goes by the name of Jalila in the Islamic community, but she chose to give out her government, so we're going to call her Monica today.
That's fine. We official today, so we're going to go ahead and be official.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. And today, we're going to be talking with Monica about autism in the African American community. And before we dive deep into our topic today, I know, and family members know, and other members of the Muslim community know, you have a son by the name of Isa, who is, well, we're going to let you talk about that. First of all, what is Isa's age? Because I haven't seen him in years. And one of the times that I remember being around him, he was jumping from chair to chair. And I said, I gave him the nickname Superman. So, only time I get to see him now is on social media. And we're going to be talking about how it is for you being an African-American mother in the Muslim community, and how it's been raising he was a child then, but he's an adult now. And we're going to be talking about that with you today.
Absolutely. So Isa Muhammad Wallace, that is my son. He is a grown man. Next month, or in 2 months, in August, he actually turns 21. So by definition, the state tells us that qualifies him as an adult. So the little boy that you knew, jumping from table to chair to off of stairs, he is a grown man. So he'll be turning 21 next month, or I'm sorry, in August, in 2 months. And it's been quite a journey being his mom. We've been through a lot of phases, so I definitely like to share my journey with others, because I'm sure there are other parents out there who have children who are autistic, who may already, be on the cusp of learning about what it may look like, what the future may look like, or may not be. They may be in a very early phases. So I would love to be able to kind of talk more about my journey and hopefully be of some value to others out here who may have similar journeys that they're following.
I want to ask you, was it a family thing, or was it just a mom thing when you found out that, there was something, a little different? There was something unique about Isa. Did you notice it as a mom, or did you all see it as a family?
That's a great story. So my cousin, who is actually holds a master's degree in special education, and a very professional and astute in her field, she actually noticed it before I saw it. Isa was born very prematurely. It spent a lot of his early life, in the NICU. So we were always, and when I say we, his father and I, as parents, we were always told sort of about what his outcomes would be. We were told everything from blind, being not able to walk, being, all kinds of things. But I didn't notice anything about Isa differently, other than that he was a really good baby. He seemed to entertain himself and not need everything else that my other children needed. But it was my cousin, who has, a degree in special education and was much more aware of, the special needs population. She started to notice things in him. And I remember her coming to me saying, "Did you ever think that Isa could be autistic?" And the only thing I knew about autism at that time was Rain Man. And I will admit it, right? I said, autistic? No, like Dustin Hoffman and Rain Man. And so she basically started to, the minute she said it, I went into, it wasn't Google then, but I went into research mode. Okay, well, if that's it, what is autism? What does that mean to me? I did my little research and I was like, okay, we can rock with that. Autism, that's fine. If that's what we have, then how do I enable him to get the best type of help and support he needs to live a normal life? And I'm going to keep using that word and throw up air quotes, because normal is defined for us sometimes. and not bias.
Okay. So, I mean, when you walk us through that, help paint a picture for us.
Sure.
When you did, get him tested, how did you feel? How did you feel as a mom? How did Dad feel?
Well, let me first back up. When my cousin told me that I think he could be autistic, the only thing that I noticed was that Issa, by that time he was age 2 and he had no words, right? There was no verbal feedback from him. But with my other children starting to talk late, I wasn't as concerned. I had a child who didn't talk until he was 4, but he immediately started reading books at 4 as well. So I wasn't as concerned. It took me, and that's the first thing I kind of want to touch on in terms of, autism, not just autism, but autism in the Black community. It took me probably 3 years to get a diagnosis. So while I self-diagnosed or had, my family members who were, educated in the field and knew more than I did, they assisted me with understanding what this could possibly be. It took me 3 years to get a diagnosis, and I had to fight for a diagnosis. So, and at the time, I didn't really relate that to my race, but now, the CDC just in 2020 has said, Black people with autism are being diagnosed at the same rate as white people. We're talking 20 years. It took them to kind of level out the playing field in terms of just diagnosing. And we're still probably 3 years on average behind non-Black people being diagnosed with autism. So there's some level of, disparity going on with being able to really get that diagnosis. And as you know, without the diagnosis, the door doesn't open to services and funding and things like that. So that getting that diagnosis was very difficult for me during that time. It took over 3 years, but I self-diagnosed him with the help of my family and started, kind of getting him speech services and things like that. Probably he was about 3 years old. And I'm not answering your question. How did I feel? I felt relieved. Because my son, they told me he may not even make it when he was in my belly. When he came out, his first 6 months of life, it was don't get too attached. I was actually told that by medical providers. So here we are at 2 years, and it's like your son has autism, and I'm like, maybe one day he'll make me a lot of money in Vegas. So I was actually relieved. I didn't necessarily go through a sort of despair or depression at that time at this diagnosis. It didn't scare me. It didn't make me feel anything, differently for him. I can't really speak to his dad, but we both had that approach, kind of like, we were happy that we had a diagnosis that wasn't as severe as what we thought.
I want to ask you, I want to get ahead, and then we're gonna go back and forth with this conversation. You mentioned resources for the African American community. How are the resources then versus now for families that have children that are artistic?
Everything that I'm saying is going to be obviously spoken from my personal experiences and the experience of others that I have, either collaborated with or become close to other parents. And unfortunately, when you have that, when you have a child with autism or a loved one with any kind of special needs, you tend to see them in a vacuum, and you tend to view the services that you receive based on the services that you receive, not on services that are available or out there. But I can tell you from my personal experience and those of my peers, and most of my peers are African American moms and dads, it's not necessarily that the services don't exist, but accessing those services is much more difficult. Which you don't know what you don't know. And I find that in the African American community, we have to hunt and dig and search and advocate for resources much more aggressively. I'll use aggressive as a word, than some of our non-African American peers. And, now that I'm on the tail end of, I won't even say tail end, but now that he's an adult and I'm much more, I've always been active in his care and in getting services, but I'm actually now looking at how adults receive care, and I'm seeing the same thing. I'm seeing the same pattern, that there is not necessarily a lack of services available, but there's a lack of care coordination or service coordination. There's a lack of knowledge of what services are available, and then being able to access those services in certain communities is actually it's not good. It's a deficit, and I haven't seen a huge improvement in it. I have seen some improvement in it, even with the diagnosis. We're still lagging behind. We're still about 3 years behind in getting diagnosis, but at least we're getting diagnosed. You know,
right.
We weren't getting diagnosed before.
So when you found out that, you know, your son was autistic, did you feel helplessness? Did you feel, I want to say the word shame.
Mm-hmm.
Did those emotions, feelings creep into your mind and your heart, at least for a day or two? Did you feel helpless? Like, you know, I have a child that has special needs.
Yeah, not initially. When he was initially diagnosed, there was a feeling of relief because the projections, or what I was told, was much more grave, right? And I thought, autism is not that big of a deal. You know, what does it really mean? Okay. And, you know, of course, I was waiting for his special skill. I'm thinking he's going to be a savant and he's going to, you know, play some instrument and be, you know, perform at the Met. So I had these misconceptions and stereotype, and I was ignorant. I was miseducated or uneducated about what that would really mean. So I didn't have that sense of despair or shame during his diagnosis. But I can tell you when that shame kind of hit. I think Issa was about 5 years old when they gave him a co-diagnosis, or typically when you're, you know, given an ASD diagnosis, there's usually a co-diagnosis, something like either mental retardation or what they're calling IDD now. It's, you know, all the terms, we rename them all the time, or it could, you know, today it's even ASD and ADHD. Or anxiety. There's a lot of different, or speech processing disorders, co-diagnosis. And I remember being at the meeting when they first said him testing to get into school, and they said, well, he's also has mental retardation. And I remember my heart kind of dropping, my stomach sinking, and all I could associate with that word was negativity, or something bad, or something not pure or perfect, or whatever, you know. So I remember processing those emotions and moving from sadness to anger real quick, and kind of being in a rage that they were able to diagnose. It took me so many years to just get him a diagnosis, but within 6 months, they were able to, without gathering enough data, in my opinion, they were able to give me a real quick diagnosis of mental retardation. And I felt anger. It was less shame. It was more anger, because I rejected it. I rejected the diagnosis. And, you know, at some point I felt like, am I in denial? You know, is it because I'm feeling shame and I don't want to accept this, or do they know what they're talking about?
Right.
You know, and part of me more of me grabbed onto, they don't know what they're talking about. That kind of balanced out that yucky, you know, emotional feeling that you have just as a mom, thinking that, you know, your child may have challenges in life that you didn't prepare for.
Because I mean, who wants to have a child with special needs? But let me say that we're grateful to the Creator for our children in whichever way that we get them. But as you said, I mean, you thinking that one day your child is going to, you know, be a major basketball player or sing at McGonagall Hall. You never ever would have thought that you would have a conversation with medical doctor and they would tell you that your child is autistic. How did that alter your life? You know, how did life look for you when you have a very large family here in the city of Philadelphia. How did it look for you when you had to go to family functions?
Okay, so you gonna have me on the radio talking about my family people, but I think we all, and when I say we all, I doubt if there is a parent of a child with autism who has not experienced some sense of social isolation, even within their own home, within their own family, within their communities, because you really do feel like no one gets it, right? No one gets it but you. And let me back up to say, like, I have grown. And just the way I think, the way I thought in 2003 when my son actually got his first diagnosis, to 2007 or 8, I forget, when I fled, the city in search of a better life for my son who was diagnosed, to how I feel now, is tremendously changed. You learn so much. So even the sense of shame or the sense of, oh, I don't have, my child's autistic, is not a bad thing, right? Then I did look at it as a sense of, wow, he has a disability. Disability usually doesn't mean something good, so let's just put it out there on the table. We use these terms, but the reality is, just the word itself is saying you're disabled versus differently able, which, we're learning, we're doing better. So it was not positive. But I can tell you, my family, I went from being in circles where people would presume that this person is not even capable of feeding themselves, not capable of even realizing, being cognizant of their surroundings. Like, you would think that he was blind, you would think that he was deaf. People still do that. They talk and have conversations around him, assuming he doesn't speak English and he doesn't hear. And I did that too as a mom. I'm not gonna just say everyone else did, but I went from that to people who would, especially in the African American community, oh, ain't nothing wrong with that boy. You just need to put him in sports, put him on a football team, let him play karate, get in karate. There was always a feeling of these strong pendulums, right? There was never a balance in between where I could just sit and think and process my feelings. I always had to process, number one, your feelings, and try to get you an understanding, right? While I'm growing and I'm understanding, and I would have to flip it, because depending on who I'm talking to, you're either telling me I'm not beating him enough, right? And you do have that, let's be real. Or I'm not disciplining him enough, or I'm not doing enough. I'm not getting, well, you need to get him therapy, because I watched this documentary. If you just send him to ABA therapy, he'll be cured and he can be normal like the rest of the world. So at some point you become socially isolated within your family and within your community. And let's not even talk about the Muslim community. There's like a third level of isolation that you can experience as well.
It's kind of like, sometimes I get bills in the mail and I know I got to pay the bill, but I will put that bill inside of a drawer. And, in one part of my mind, I'm thinking, well, God's going to take care of that bill for me. But the reality is that's not going to happen. Have you found that many other parents that you may have spoken to, when they found out that their child was autistic, did they just, were they in denial about it and just say, well, I'm just going to pray and the Lord is going to take it away?
Yeah, I mean, I've been in circles where it runs the gamut, from people who want to, do ruqya on a child, or, pray it away and, be extreme religiously with it, to people who definitely go in denial. They just trying to diagnose our little black boys with everything. So again, there's never, I shouldn't say never, there's rarely a balanced approach where you consider all aspects, right? And I will credit my mother with being one who's always kind of instilled in me that there is a middle path, right? And so I could be real extreme on one end or the other, and I have been at times. But I'll give you an example. I'm not a big, I join a lot of parent groups, and I have over time, but I can tell you, I would go into certain parent groups which were designed and meant to be of support, right? And I would come out depressed. I would come out of those groups and my outlook on life or my child's life would be so grim. And I would begin to worry about things that has yet to happen, hearing about outcomes, right? If you hear, one of the statistics, I was just looking at one of my papers, 87% of adults with autism never live independently. I'm okay to hear that today because I have a 21-year-old. I wasn't okay to hear that at 5 years old. I wasn't okay to hear those outcomes and not be emotionally impacted by them, which may have then, caused me to maybe hover, more than I should, or not hover and not get him, recognize and understand that the diagnosis is not a death sentence. Autism is not a disease. It's not a disorder, although they classify it as a disorder, but I don't have a medical degree, but I'm going to go on record and say they're wrong. It's not a disorder. It is something that we in society is something that society is conditioned to say this is normal behavior. This is normal. We normally communicate via verbal communication, so that's normal. It's something that sits outside of societal norms, but I wouldn't necessarily call it a disease, a disorder, or even, something that should make a parent have this sense of dread where they feel like they're on an emotional roller coaster going up and down, worrying about, things that you don't have control over in the future.
I want to ask you, because you mentioned it, you said it, an elephant is in the room, our wonderful, beautiful Islamic Muslim community. I mean, was he able, as a young child, was he able to go to the masjid? Was he able to be part of the scouts? And how were you treated when he went to the masjid?
Okay. So, I've had two experiences in the Islamic community. I've had, again, the extremes where there is a sense of let's not even acknowledge, right, that any child, any of our family members have some type of disability. And especially in the Islamic community, you have these different cultural interpretations of what's okay and what's not okay. And what I found is when I lived in Philadelphia, I'm born and raised, when I lived in Philadelphia, what I had to deal with mostly within the African American Islamic community was people who thought that you just needed to be more stern, you needed to be more disciplined, you needed to really teach them how to act in the masjid. And we do that. We don't allow children to be children, let alone autistic children who may have a need to, move around. They may have a need to stim, which is basically stimulate, physical. They may rock or they may do something to quiet their world because they're sensory overload. So they're jumping around maybe a little bit more. You know my son, he was Superman, right? He was always jumping off of things, right? That didn't fly in the African-American Muslim community. You had people who would treat me, and when I say people, I'm not just talking about strangers, even some of my own family members, who would treat me as though I was just a parent who had no control, who I wasn't able to, I didn't have parenting skills that allowed me to discipline, Yeah, we know he got autism, but the football's on. He still needs to sit down.
You need to deal with him.
Yes. So that has been one experience. When I moved to North Carolina, the masjid that I attended most often was much more, it wasn't multicultural, but largely Arab, Indo-Pac, non-African-American masjid. And what I found that the same sentiment, but it was almost like we don't bring those people out into the masjid. We hide, I'm going to say it, I'm sure they don't like, that's basically what they're doing, but we hide those members of our family who are less than perfect, who a disability, again, is seen as a defect, right? And so to answer your question, I feel that Issa did not really have his level of being integrated in the Islamic community. Fortunately, I come from a big family of Muslims. So he was always around a lot of Muslims, but not within the Islamic community. It's been his family, more or less, that he, so he understands, and, when it's time to pray, that's a time of quiet and all of that. So he got that because he comes from a large Muslim family. But what about the autistic Muslim, family, where you're the only Muslim in your family and you rely on a masjid for your social integration, and the masjids are so hostile in terms of an environment for someone with autism? And not everyone, it's a spectrum for a reason, because there's levels, right? Not everyone, but I would say in general, I don't believe that our masjids are very friendly, to people who
to normal.
Yes, right. And so it was a challenge. I hope I answered your question. I went around a little bit, but okay.
You did. I want to ask you now, as far as Issa living on his own, is it at some point that you, as a mother, will allow him to live on his own?
Absolutely.
For those who may follow you on Facebook, I've seen him ride in the car with you. I've seen him, doing things in the home, and he a little aggressive.
A little.
And we thank you for sharing those intimate moments with us, because it gives us the understanding of, how it is with he went from a baby to a child to 21 years old now. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that. His aggression and him living on his own.
Yeah. So, okay. So the first question you asked me was, will Issa ever live on his own? Allah knows best, right? It is my goal. It's been my goal from day one. Before I had the diagnosis and after I had the diagnosis, I never discounted that was possible, right? Mm-hmm. Despite everyone telling me, some people would tell me, sure, he's going to live on his own. He's going to go to college. He's going to become an attorney, because I know such and such. Bill Gates had autism. So again, you always have people that talk in extremes, right? They talk about the outliers and not the average person, right? So I never went too far, but I always, you set a goal, right? And you set the goal high. So the goal is always, I have the same aspirations for him that I have for my other kids. And none of it relies on you living with me all the time. So that's always been my goal. Now, will he ever achieve that? It's still to be determined. But I believe that he has a good opportunity to live as independently as he can, with the right support. And where I'm at now, I don't call myself an advocate or anything like that, but I'm definitely someone who wants to see for my son the same thing that I want others to have, the ability to reach their highest potential. And whether that be sending someone off to, a sports event, or, being the best basketball player or football player. Of course, you want them to, reach for the stars. Sending someone off to college and, I want you to be an astronaut. What I don't want is Issa to be limited by preconceived notions about what he's able to do, right? Exactly. Without trying. So I can tell you right now, I moved into a home 2 years ago with the express purposes of carving out a more independent living space for Issa. So right now, Issa lives with me, but he lives in a self-contained, fully self-contained apartment that was designed with the express purpose of being able to support someone with autism who can gain a level of independence and start, start learning daily living skills and taking care of themselves, but with the wraparound supports that they should have, that, our government has set aside some money for this, that every, person with autism should have access to as well. So, my goal is to make sure that Issa has the resources and the opportunity to live on his own. And I believe I definitely know that that's possible with the right support.
Now, is there vocational training available for Issa and others?
Absolutely. There is vocational training available. There is in-home support that's available. And depending on what state you're in, no matter what state you're in, there is access to, each state has access to a bucket of money, basically, and some of it is set aside to ensure that people with disabilities are supported within their environment, within their natural living environment, to be able to live the fullest lives that they can, whether that be residential support, whether that be vocational support, in-home support with functional skills, education. So there is funds that are allocated for that, but how it's definitely not allocated evenly. It's definitely not enough. And most people don't even know what access they have, right? Because it's not like it's people knocking on your door and saying, hey, Miss Wallace, did you know that in the state of North Carolina, you're entitled to $50,000 to make modifications to your home to be able to allow this person with disability to live in their natural environment? Had I known that before I invested my own money in creating this basement apartment, right? I'm tapping into those funds. So, and with anything, obviously, there's a small pot, but it's meant to get to the people who are most in need of it. So one of my goals is to ensure that, number one, people know that, and number two, that those funds don't necessarily become incentives for, not so maybe advanced providers of social services to just line their pockets, right? And create homes that don't necessarily allow the person to achieve their fullest independence.
Now, before we go, I wanted to ask you a couple more questions. In lieu of the time that we live in right now, I'm in law enforcement. We've had the killing of George Floyd and so many other Black young men and older men. Your son being autistic, you can't, if you lived in Philadelphia, you couldn't send him down the street to the Poppy store. I don't believe that that's something that you can do, because there could be an altercation with law enforcement, and I'm telling you, they're not trained here in Philadelphia, and I doubt it they're trained in the country to be able to deal with someone when they come across them if they're autistic. Your thoughts on that?
Oh, okay, that's another shoulder head, and the reason I say that is because one of the things 2 years ago, Issa decided that he didn't want to leave the house. Before he was out there in the community every day, whether it's, job training, schools, all of that, he did it. He did it all. And then 2 years ago, he decided, I'm going to social distance before COVID hit, right? And it was a blessing for me, right? Because the amount of anxiety you have as a parent of a Black child, period, in this country is deafening. It's alarming, whether they're autistic or not. I have so many of my, my peers who've lost children, to whether it's to gun violence, random, indiscriminate, whether it's through, interaction with law enforcement who are absolutely not trained on any level, right, to deal with, someone who, number one, is maybe nonverbal, may not respond to verbal commands the way in which you expect them to. I'm going to be all over the place because this is a heavy subject, but just in terms, because Issa's not leaving a house like that, it's given me I have less anxiety day to day. But I know you remember maybe 3 years ago, autistic guy, he wasn't shot, but his care worker was shot. Because he was trying to diffuse, a situation, and he was shot, and I was depressed for probably 2 months after that, and terrified, and happy that my son decided he didn't want to leave. Even now, right now, I try to get Issa out to do his own shopping, as much as I can. If I could do it once a week, I would, but, monthly. And I remember one time we went to Whole Foods and we were shopping, and he got aggressive with me in the market because he wanted something that I wasn't trying to get him. So he got aggressive with me, and I wasn't afraid for myself. I was afraid to think it was a good idea to pick up a phone and call 911 because they see a Black man being aggressive and being a danger. So yeah, that's it's a level of anxiety that mothers of Black children deal with, and it's on 10 when your child has autism or anything else that may inhibit him or her to be able to perform in the way that law enforcement expects them to perform in any situation.
Now, in his apartment that you've made in your home, does he have his own private suite, his own bathroom, his own kitchen?
That boy got it made. So yeah, so my goal is, and when I say my goal, I'm transitioning from just being a mom to, I have a over 20-year career in technology, and one of the things that I've been doing is, helping make other corporations rich by using technology to enhance, the lives of individuals. So I say, hey, I'm gonna take some of this knowledge and use it for my own purposes. So Issa has a self-contained apartment. It's outfitted with the technology that allows him to really kind of operate independently. On paper, if anyone were to do an assessment, they would say Issa is not capable of living alone. But if I went and I decided to come visit you for the weekend in Philadelphia, Issa would be okay. He has his own living room. He has a kitchen. Within his kitchen, he has cooking appliances, but not appliances that can't be from a safety perspective. They have overrides on them so that there can never be a fire or something that places him in safety. He has audio sensors and visual sensors that allow me at any time to kind of pick up a phone and make sure that things are okay if I don't detect, a certain amount of movement, or is he up? Is he, going about his day as a routine? He has, his laundry area. He can wash his own clothes, dry his own clothes. He can make his own meals. He can pretty much live independently, but he's never left alone because there's always...
I want to go back very quickly before we let you go. So you mean to tell me you can leave North Carolina, your home, and you can go away for a weekend, and you can leave him in his own little suite, and he'll be okay?
I could. I do not.
Okay.
Because I'm a mom, right? And as a mom, you're going to always be like, oh, is he going to be okay? So I haven't got there yet. But I know that, if I'm in I call it my apartment, in his apartment, right? I'm up here for the weekend. If I don't see him for the weekend, he's okay. So I know that I could. But I don't, because there's always the unknown, right? But I believe that with the additional technology that we have, and as long as I have a way to notify and dispatch support nearby if needed in an emergency, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, he can live independently. So that's my goal. My goal is to afford him with the resources that allows him to live as independently as he can. And if that's with a check-in every now and then to make sure you're cool, that's what we're going to do. But we're not going to presume that, okay, because you don't talk, that you can't do these things on your own.
Exactly. We got about 3 minutes left, and I want to give you that time, and I want you to talk about this new project that you're working on, when your website will be up. And, as you said, as a mother, you want to be able to not just give something to your child, but you want to help other parents that are in need of help.
Yeah, so thanks for bringing that up. My company is called R&I Designs and Associates. R&I, Remote Nano Insights, and it's basically what we're trying to do is leverage technology to be able to give parents like me the sense of calm that comes when you know that your child is safe. That's number one. So a parent who may be thinking, I think my child may have the ability to do some things on his own, like cook his own meals, but what I wouldn't want to do is to risk a safety event. So how can we enable those parents with the right technology to be able to give them the ability to push the envelope a little bit and see whether or not their child has the ability to cook their own meals? Same with safety technology. So what we do is we pretty much do assessments, and we look at your child. I shouldn't say child, your adult, right? Because we're really talking about adults' ability to live independently, but your loved one's ability, based on doing an assessment of how technology can be used to sort of prompt, support, and service them, that allows them to live independently or more independently, and also to give parents the opportunity to, 87% of people with ASD live with parents. At some point, these parents are going to need to, support themselves. They're going to be too old to be able to take care of grown individuals. So
That's
what
true.
do you do then?
That's true.
So I definitely will, willing to come back on the show and talk more about the technology we use, the data insights that we provide. We're in a pilot mode. We have 2 clients right now that we're outfitting their homes with the technology to be able to sort of assist them. And actually, one of our clients, they don't even have autism, they have cerebral palsy, but similar needs to be able to afford them with the technology that allows them to live more independently. So the technology that, the products that we're building are not just for people with autism, but with anyone who may be supported by technology that allows them to live more independently.
You're such a great mom.
Oh, thank you. Tell that to somebody. Let me see. You know who you tell that to, right?
That's another story. That's another another interview. I thank you so much for being with us today and giving out a wealth of information. If there's a parent out there that wants to get in contact with you, are you willing to give out your information?
Absolutely. So you can definitely hit me up on Facebook. I'm Monica Wallace. I'm open to accepting friend requests or whatever. My website is www.rnidesignsinc.com. If you have an Android, you can check it out today and click and request additional information. Our iPhone technology is struggling right now, but you can definitely give out my information and have a parent contact me directly, especially if it's a parent who has a child with autism and they're wanting to look and plan for the future.
But we definitely have to do a part 2 to this interview, because people are on Facebook right now and they're saying that we love this show and we want to see her on here again. So we definitely
It only took you 6 months to get me on.
Well, you were busy. We were working on your schedule. And I would love to get down there to visit you in North Carolina.
I would definitely love that. And then by then we'll have our home up and we can show you our model home and show you what our technology actually does.
So are you like the founder of this project? This is your baby.
This is my baby. This is something that, my baby needed help. I didn't see it out there. Mm-hmm. What am I going to do? I come from that do for self mentality. If you don't see it, you do for self. Yes.
I'd like to come down there and get a job with you,
That might be something we talk about that.
I'm speaking it into existence. I thank you so much, my sister, for spending time and being with us today.
Alhamdulillah. Okay.
Thanks.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
We want to thank everybody for tuning in today. That is Monica Wallace. Go to her website. And I'm telling you, what I really believe she should do, she should start a blog, whereas though you can follow her and Issa. I think we're going to make a suggestion to her. Thank everybody for tuning in. Thank my lovely producer back at the studio for making it happen. She really did a great job. I thank her so much. I want you to stay tuned for the Rick Ford show that's coming up next. Anything that we said that was wrong, it was from us. Anything that we said is right is from the Creator, Most High. We thank everybody for tuning in, and God willing, we will see you next week. Assalamu alaikum, family. Peace.